In this short demonstration, I'm just going to unwrap this simple speaker which has been given to me by one of the students. So it may have mesh-based issues, I'm not quite sure. I'll just fix things as I go along, I suppose. So this is the actual mesh itself. Nice and simple, so no concerns there. Probably could do with some soft bevels on objects, on certain edges, just to give it a bit of life, so it's not so angular, I suppose. But aside from that, it's adequate, it meets our requirements. So first of all, we do have this section over here, this base. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to bevel these edges. Just by beveling them, I'll just give it a bit of life. And I'm just going to put 3 segments on there. That will do there. The base is good to go. Currently, if I just got in the right view, currently this intersects the actual base, which isn't going to look too good. So just by moving it up a touch, and then we will put a bevel on there at some point. That's going to help. So I'm just going to isolate that. So we have this, I'm not quite sure what this is. Obviously at some point there would have been some reference associated with that, but I'm not quite sure what that is. So for the time being, I'm going to select that edge there. I'm going to put a bevel on there. Just going to loop all the way around and make sure I put a bevel on these corner edges as well. So I'm just double clicking, trying to get as much as I can selected. That looks okay there. And then finally the bottom. So that looks like we've got everything. I'm just going to put a bevel on there as well. I'll agree with what we've already got. Just put 3 on there. Yeah, that will do. I'm just going to give it one smoothing group, and that there will just tidy things up and just make things look a bit more interesting, I suppose. And that feels a bit more believable now with the object sat with a little bevel sat on the actual plinth, so that's good to go. So let's have focus on these particular sections over here. So I think these probably could do with just a little bevel on there. I'm not quite sure how these objects intersect with this. I'd have to see the reference, I suppose, but it would suggest to me that it's an object that sits on top of it. So I'm going to just select this particular edge and just push it out a touch, just there. And then I'm going to apply the same process to these actual edges. Quick little bevel on there, 3 segments, and I'm just going to also soften all those edges. And it will just make it look a bit more interesting. And for the sake of doing a few additional steps, not exactly much to it, but it will have an improvement overall, I suppose. So we've got this section over here. So what I'll do is I'll essentially unwrap it now. There's no need for me to put bevels on each and every one of these. We've done it once on here. As such, what we'll do is we'll effectively finish unwrapping this and duplicate it as the case may be. And also, the geometry is currently intersecting there. I'm not quite sure if that's intentional. I don't think it is. But nonetheless, that will need fixing at some point. So I'll worry about that later. Right, so let's now attempt to unwrap this. But before we do that, I think I probably should delete anything which is repetitive. So the way to approach unwrapping is, if you have a repetitive shape, why unwrap the same shape 50 times over when you can simply just do it once and then duplicate the actual mesh, and then everything else will obviously already be unwrapped once you've duplicated it. Then simply a matter of clicking on layout, separate the UV shells, and you should be good to go. So we'll use this as a template. We'll Control D that, and duplicate that, put that one over here. I'll just hit combine there. The reason why I'm going to do that is because that will just at least give me an idea of what the original looked like. Just makes life a lot easier. So now we've just, essentially what we're going to do is unwrap these 3 components. And once we've unwrapped them, we've effectively unwrapped all of it, and that'll be the very next step. So let's now open up our UV editor. And we will need to see the toolkit as well. So again, I'm going to do the laborious task of just dragging that onto there, moving it off to the side. So that's now ready. So the interface is essentially now ready. So let's attempt the base first of all. So we'll treat it just like a cylinder. It's going to have a top and a bottom and some sides. So what I'll do initially is just select the three objects in question, and I'm just going to go to camera based. Don't forget that if you are struggling to understand how to do this all properly, as a designer, you can get away with just using automatic, as the case may be. Or in the long run, it's advisable that you learn the basics and do it properly. So here we have our base. I'm just going to go to the front view. Essentially just going to select everything and then deselect the middle. So that should just give me the top and the bottom. So there's our top and there's our bottom. I'm going to select the perimeter, two edges, edge perimeter, and just snap that off. So Shift X, just break that off, and we should have three shells. 1, 2, and 3. And then it's simply a matter of selecting one of the edges on the end. I'm actually going to select both. The reason being is because otherwise we're going to end up with a really long UV shell, which might have an impact on our overall textile rate. So I'm going to press Shift X. So that's now done. So it's simply a matter of using the same processes as we've done in the past. So unfold, within the transform, just click on Set, and Orient, and finally Layout. So can you see how if we had this still connected, it's going to be very, very, very long, and then the overall textile rate for that would have been impacted. So if you ever see a really, really long strip, then it might be advisable to just slice it into smaller chunks. Let's try this little cylindrical section over here. So it appears to be the case we have some geometry that's not going to be seen. So I'm just going to move this over to the side. I'll need to centralize a pivot point on it first of all. So I'll press Alt and C. You can go to Modify Center Pivot. So we have some detail there that we don't need. We don't need the sides. So I'm just going to grab that loop there, press Delete. We don't need the back either. It can never be seen. And that'll just simplify the asset. So that's better. The default UV for that is absolutely fine. Even if it wasn't, it'd be simply a matter of just clicking camera based and it's done, because it is literally just a flat plane, isn't it? A quick unfold on that. We'll leave that as is. We don't need to worry too much about trying to scale it in relation to any of the other objects. We can do all of that right at the end. So now we have this section over here. So it looks like at some point this has obviously been rotated. You can see there it doesn't really tie in with either side. Not quite sure how that's happened. Well, I didn't do it, that's for sure. So I'll just semi-rotate it. That will do. That will do. So a similar scenario going on over here. There will be some areas that we don't, you're not going to see. So if that's the case, then we need to delete them really. So let's have a quick. I'm just going to press Control 1, isolate that. So I think it's safe to say we're never going to see the back. So I can delete that. And this over here, let's see how much of this we can see. I'm just going to press Control 1 again. So we'll see up to this point over here. So it might be wiser to move this particular edge loop closer. That way it's going to take up less space in our UV shell and give us more room for other things. So that's better. So this one should be straightforward. We'll literally treat it as a cylinder. So I'm just going to give it one UV. And then I'm literally just going, because it's almost like a very thin cylinder, I'm literally just going to put a split there with Shift X, select, unfold, orient it, and just quick layout. That there is perfect for our needs. So we have these two. Again, we don't need to worry too much about trying to match them all together in terms of size. We can do that at a later point. And now we have effectively a giant cube with another cube on top of it. So what I'll do is I'll just select the cube at the front. That looks like we've got everything. We're missing that poly there. I think what it might be wiser also having this edge actually. So what I'll do is I'm just going to double click on that edge, and that's gone all the way around, and I'll break it off at that point there. So Shift X will break that off, and just move that off to the side. And with that, you can literally just hit unfold, and that will meet our requirements. There's no concerns there. And now we have a scenario where it's effectively a big cube. So we have a top to our cube, and we have a bottom at the moment. So we probably should delete some of the polys that we're not going to see. So I'm just going to isolate to Daisy. I'm going to isolate that, and I think it's safe to say that these particular polys will never be seen. So let's delete those as well. So quick delete on that. That's better. So it's just slightly more optimized. So we have a top, so let's separate that top off. I'm just going to do a quick drag select. Might be wiser doing it from the front view properly, and then deselect. So that should just give me just the top. The alternative to that really is just double click on that particular loop, but sometimes it won't do it all. So can you see how, because we have this try, it's not going to loop all the way around. So that's a good example where you'll have to approach it in the way I've just done it there. So a 2-edge perimeter with control. Shift X will break that off. So that's our top. And then if we think of this logically, we've literally just got a big side really. So we just need to define an edge loop, such as this one over here. I'm going to double click on it, and that should loop all the way around. But can you see it's how looping onto this one as well? So what I need to do here is press Control and deselect these ones, and that way it will only select this one going all the way down to the bottom. Press 5 again, just checking to make sure nothing untoward is going on. Looks like I've got it all, although it seems to be. Let's have a look. It's looping back all the way around to this point over here, which is not what we want. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to press Control, and I'm going to make sure that it's not trying to go all the way back around to that point there. So when it gets to this point, I'm just going to attach it to that one. Sorry, should I say select that one? So the break will come all the way along and break at this point over here. Actually, no, the best bet might be here, is to just break that bottom bit off. I think that's going to make more logical sense really. So I'm going to press Shift X on there, and that will just give us just that there. I think we're better off doing that really. Yeah, that would work. So again, I'm just going to double click on that loop. Looks like we haven't got anything else selected. So Shift X on there, and then let's try quick unfold on that, and we should obviously see 4 sides, which we can. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's super. So if we were to attach that on there, we're going to end up with a slight bit of distortion. It wouldn't necessarily be the end of the world, but we've got lots of UV space anyway, so to be honest with you, it's not going to make any difference. So it looks like everything is correct. Again, we don't need to worry too much about peeling and straightening it. We can do all of that to everything at the end. The key thing is that all your shells have been split. Sorry, all your UVs seams are all in the correct place. So now we just need to replicate this, what we have over here really. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to move this over to the side, just over here, just push it back a touch. I'm just going to go into my front view, and that one there, Let's combine these two together. I'm going to press Alt-C to center the pivot just in case. I'm going to go into wireframe. I probably should align this up perfectly, I suppose. Let's go to top view, make sure it's aligned nicely. So we do have a modeling issue again, where somehow in the process of doing this, it's been rotated, and I don't think I rotated it. So I think the student who's modeled this probably should ensure that things are very, very straight and perfectly aligned with the grid in the first instance. If you start introducing small little rotations here and there, then it can cause a lot of problems in the long run, because none of your, the moment you put that in the scene, everything's going to be slightly rotated. And if you do need to rotate it for whatever reason, then you would do that within the engine rather than within Maya. It's still workable, to be fair, but that probably explains why these things are slightly offset. Not necessarily the end of the world. Right, so just simply a matter of saying, right, Control D, and then we know we've got one there. So I'm just going to press 5 to make sure that we have a roughly equal distance. That will do. So we've got them. So I'm going to press Control D, just move these up there and thereabouts. Control D, move that up. Control D, move that up. And then finally that one over there. So another Control D, one more move up. And I'm just going to select that one, press Control D, and just move it roughly here. I'm just going to scale this temporarily, and we'll see what it looks like. So I'm just going to press 5. Okay, so that's going there. It's currently off center, and again, it's off center because the whole object is off center, really. So yeah, in the long run, you would never model like that, but hey ho, we can live with that for the time being. I'll leave it there for the time being and press Control D and pop it over here. So all those are unwrapped. That's the main thing. So the issue we have really is, if you notice it carefully, some of the underlying geometry is actually protruded through, and that's because this thing over here, the edge at this point, that one there, go back into, is effectively intersecting that plane. So I'm just going to move it ever so slightly forward. There we are. That will do. So with our previous one, we know that one's a bit gone now, so we'll just delete it. So at this point, I am going to combine everything together. Next step is going to be edit, delete all by type history. So with history deleted and transformations frozen, it should simply be a matter of selecting it all, clicking unfold. You can always do unfold one more time just in case. Press set, orient, and layout. And then lo and behold, that's everything now in place with correct UVs. So that would be how to unwrap something slightly more complex. But the thing to note is we've broke it down into simple shapes, and then we've just used common sense in terms of why bother unwrapping 20 things if they're all identical, and then just rebuild it once you've unwrapped that one repetitive component.